It's been an interesting start to the year across all markets really, but Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in particular have been incredibly volatile to start off 2025. This then raises the questions from a lot of people, and this is why we're making this video today. What's going to happen next with Bitcoin? What is causing Bitcoin to move, and why is the crypto market in particular so volatile? So what I want to do today is answer all of those questions for you and basically make sure we cover everything so that way you feel a little bit more comfortable when deciding whether you should be trading and investing in Bitcoin during 2025. Now, at the very end of this video, we're going to be announcing, basically we've got a giveaway that we're doing at the moment where you've got a chance to win a completely free challenge account. Alright, now at the end of the video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a particular question and you're going to have to put the answer to that in the comments. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to go over to some charts. We're going to go through a chart of Bitcoin, look at the historical price chart, and also then discuss the most recent price action to kind of give my insight from a technical aspect. And of course we're going to then be covering what you should be looking for the rest of 2025. So without further ado, let's jump over to some charts. Okay then, so what we've got here is a weekly chart of Bitcoin. And the reason I pulled up the weekly chart is because I want to have a little look over the historical data as well as the current, because I want to go through kind of what drives this market, because it's a little bit different. The crypto market is a little bit different to your traditional market. If we compared it to when you trade a stock, for example, well, when we're trading stocks, we're able to look at certain elements that can help us understand the value of the business, right? We can look at the balance sheet, what assets they've got, what sort of debts and liabilities they have. We can look at historical revenue generation and obviously how the earnings have been trending. We can look at the analysts' expectations, what future plans the business has. We'll know when these earnings reports are going to be due over the coming quarters and the sort of areas where the market could potentially get a little bit more volatile, things like this. Now we can start to understand all of these things and put the pieces together in the puzzle to understand, do we think this is a good time to buy this stock ultimately? When it comes to crypto, it's a little bit different. It's very, very sentiment driven. Although it's been around for a few years now, we are still very much in the early stages of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in terms of, the real world. It's not like it's used every day to go and buy your shopping and things like that. There's still very much this element of trying to understand where cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular, where does it fall into our day-to-day lives? When it comes to then valuing Bitcoin, it's very, very difficult to do that because we can't sit here and say, right, it generates this kind of yield, it's got this kind of cash flow to it. It doesn't have anything like that. There's no kind of intrinsic value per se. So it's very, very sentiment driven. And if we look at the historical moves and the volatility that we've had, I think that kind of is represented in the price perfectly. For example here, okay, we had this big base and we had this huge run up off the back of COVID. Now coming out of COVID, markets as a whole kind of went pretty nuts, right? We had all sorts of government stimulus and things like this going on, and a lot of people basically coming into the market, a lot of fresh inflows into the market of capital, and Bitcoin was no exception to that. So we saw this huge breakout from this couple of year kind of consolidation that we had and this huge rip up, and we actually peaked out at a high of about $64,899. Now very, very quickly, obviously we saw a lot of profit taking in here, a little bit of a sentiment shift, and we saw quite a large drop, and we come right down into the low 30s. Once again, we then obviously found some buyers into some fresh highs, but then from the sort of back end of 2021, that sentiment completely shifted again. And as we then went into 2022, we obviously had a bear market in terms of US stocks and things like that as well. So this rotation that we had effectively from people being happy to take risk in their portfolio kind of all evaporated. And so therefore, the appetite for wanting to buy Bitcoin also evaporated. So we then saw this huge sell-off. In fact, if we actually look at it from its peak to its trough, it's roughly a 78% drop there, right? So it's a very, very large drop off. Now, as we then came into 2023, once again, US markets were kind of coming out of that bear market. We were starting to rally again. And so people's appetite for risk once more was starting to improve. And we then obviously triggered this large run up. At the back end of last year, huge obviously spike in volume, breakout into some all-time highs once again, and that then kind of drove the market into overdrive essentially, right? And everyone was going nuts, everyone wanted to buy Bitcoin, everyone felt like they was missing out, there was FOMO, and we had this price driving higher and higher and higher. Now our all-time high at the time of making this video came back on the pretty much the last week of January of this year, and the all-time high price was 109,358. Pay close attention to that number for a reason you'll see later on. Since then, we've obviously dropped off quite a bit, and at the time of filming this, we're trading at 82,800 basically. The reason for the most recent sell-off and the most recent sentiment shift that we've had, a lot of that comes down to the volatility that we're seeing once again in US markets. We're seeing this sort of negativity come into the markets where we're wondering about trade wars with all these tariffs and stuff like that that's going on with Trump. Inflation isn't falling as quickly as some people were hoping for. So now there's obviously conversation about potentially the monetary policy stance from the Fed over in the US, and are they going to keep rates higher for a little bit longer than maybe some people are anticipating. So rather than this big bullish sentiment that we had and everyone was just buying Bitcoin, buying US stocks, everything was just flying up, there's been a little bit of a pause put on that. So we're kind of seeing a little bit of an unwinding, and this is really going to be the thing that plays the role in where Bitcoin goes next, because as I've mentioned, it isn't driven by an intrinsic underlying value, right? We haven't got cash flows or anything like that like we do with a stock. This is very much going to be driven around the sentiment as a whole of markets, and you'll tend to find, at least historically, that Bitcoin very closely kind of follows US stock markets and NASDAQ in particular. So if we do find that, for example, if the US economy was to slow down and we was to start to see the stock market continuing to move lower, Bitcoin would probably do the same thing. It's obviously not a guarantee, but most likely, based on the way that sentiment would then shift in the market, we'd see Bitcoin lower. Now, with that being said, we are still in a positive trend. We're making, technically speaking, higher highs and higher lows. We're trading above our 52-week moving average. You could argue we're coming down into a technical support level with those previous highs, so you could well find that we get some buyers stepping in here as well. But like I was saying, your sort of plan and how you trade and invest into Bitcoin is obviously going to be dependent on you and your strategy. But the key things to really be paying attention for in the future is really going to come down to what is the sentiment of market and what's going on in the world. Are we seeing the US economy still nice and strong? Is there still tariff risks and trade wars going on that's obviously going to be killing that appetite for risk in the markets? Are US stock markets maintaining a bullish overall trend and sentiment? Because if that obviously evaporates, as I said, Bitcoin will likely to move lower. These are the sorts of things that you want to be looking for throughout the rest of 2025, because if you pay close attention to that, that's going to give you an idea on where you can obviously be going. And then, like I say, how that sort of sentiment and how that market structure at the time fits your strategy, that will obviously be personal to you. I'm not going to tell you when to buy and sell something. It's all going to come down to strategy. The only thing I would say is, obviously, because as we've seen, it can be a very volatile asset class, just maybe be a little bit cautious to how much capital you decide to allocate to Bitcoin and sort of generally cryptocurrency as a whole, really. So that wraps up our analysis of Bitcoin, and hopefully gives you a much clearer insight into what moves Bitcoin as a market, typically speaking, and also the sorts of things you want to be paying attention to throughout the rest of this year if you are going to be somebody that's trading and investing in Bitcoin. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, we have a giveaway that we're running currently. So I'm now going to give you the information that you need to enter that giveaway. So first things first, you need to like this video and you need to make sure you are subscribed, if you're not already, to the Prop Firm Match YouTube channel. Now, in the comments below this video, what you need to do is answer the following question. What price is the all-time high for Bitcoin? I mentioned this earlier on. So what is the all-time high price in Bitcoin at the time of obviously filming this video, just in case it goes crazy again before this video comes out? So pop that answer in the comments below and then watch for our next release on the YouTube channel, because of course we will be announcing the winners then. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel and get your answer in the comments below. And outside of that, guys, I will catch up with you in the next video.